This podcast was recorded on traditional Denizal land.
Hello, it's Trey. Welcome to Before the Peace. This month I had an awesome conversation with Paulette Flamond, an entrepreneur and business owner who has been in the Peace region for almost 30 years. She has a very, very lengthy resume that includes being the current Northeast Director for Metis Nation BC and serving 20 years as the Executive Director of the Northeast Aboriginal Business Centre. Some of her accolades include being named the Aboriginal Woman of the Year from Community Futures and receiving the BC Achievement Foundation Award of Distinction for her endeavours to elevate Indigenous businesses in BC. She also has post-secondary training in Native Communications and Public Relations from Grant MacEwan College and an Aboriginal Management Certificate from UBC's Saunders School of Business. In 2013, she received an honorary Associate Arts degree from Northern Lights College and is a graduate of 2 life coaching programs. We talk about most of that within the interview. She also owns Scoops Clothing, a women's boutique in Fort St. John, and the Boreal Gardens, a boutique experimental permaculture farm. She started the farm with her partner, Gary Oker, the councillor of Doig River First Nation, in 2016. Actually, the whole interview was actually recorded in the Dome Greenhouse on her and Gary's property, which was really awesome. Start the episode by getting into Paulette's advocacy work for Métis Indigenous people, women in business, and entrepreneurs. Before we get into the episode, let's get paid. This podcast wouldn't be possible without the help of Troyer Ventures. Troyer has been serving our community and the energy industry with take and vac trucks since 2000. They are built on the principles of hard work, service, and community, and they are proud to offer the financial support to make this program possible. Thank you so much, Troyer. And to all our listeners out there, make sure you're emailing me at beforethepeace@energeticcity.ca if you have any comments or story ideas. You can also hit me up on Twitter at beforethepeace_ and on Instagram at beforethepeace. Now let's get into our interview with Paulette. You've done so much advocacy work for Indigenous people, Métis people, women in business, entrepreneurs in general. Why has that been such a focus for you in your career for many, many decades?
Well, I talk first about entrepreneurship, and I think, coming from, being a road allowance child in Saskatchewan and looking at a way out of, poverty, that entrepreneurship was especially important to me. And I did have uncles and, relatives that, operated like construction business, roofing businesses. My father was in the roofing business. Today, many of my siblings and family are, entrepreneurs doing their own business. But it was really important to me, I think, at a young age, knowing that one way that I would be able to, rise above poverty was through, education, getting involved in entrepreneurship. And so I think that, being born into dire poverty, really basically pushed me, to do something with my life. And all the advocacy work that I've done, it's, correlates to my leadership style, which I call myself a servant leader. If you're on my Facebook, you'll see #servant leader. And I really, servant leadership is a philosophy. And it's, right now, I think it's 100 of the Fortune 500 best companies to work for. Actually, no, it's 1/3, follow servant leadership philosophy. And servant leader philosophy is really about serving first, right? And then leading. So I really believe that, anybody can become a good leader because anybody can serve. And so that's my philosophy of wanting to help others, and all my life wanting to help others who were, maybe in a worse off situation than I was. But I always had a deep down desire to assist others and to give to others. And so I think that is where definitely it comes from, my wanting to advocate, my wanting to support, my wanting to do business. So it's really, all about how I was raised. And people are like, oh, wow, you grew up hungry. Yeah, I remember going to bed hungry. I remember not having any food to eat as a child, right? But the thing is that, like, don't pity me, because really it pushed me to do something that I may not have if I would have been, born to affluence.
We've also had the conversation of like it could have also went the other way of like overwhelming you or having other effects on you where you couldn't use it as inspiration, right? So it could have definitely went another way. Speaking of inspiration, you mentioned some of your family members owning businesses, and obviously living in poverty, it helped drive you. But what about other events or people around you when you were younger? You were talking also about your school and some of the nuns there at the school. What are some other influences to you?
Well, I think a big part of that also was reading, because if you talk to any of my siblings and if you ask them, what do you remember of Paulette when she was young? And a couple of my siblings have said, all I remember is that she always had a book in her face. So I used to do a lot of reading. Like I would read anything I possibly could get my hands on. At one time I thought maybe I was just reading for escapism. When I got older, I was analyzing that in therapy, that, maybe it was just, as an escapism. But even if that is in fact the truth, what a great escapism is reading. And, I spend every day having to read materials for my work. And I mean, that's how we garner information. And that's where we learn about, things that you can bring into your business to enhance your business. So still today I read, and, as a child I read. So I think reading for me also, assisted me in, that was a big influence in my life. There were, some teachers, that were influential, that I wanted to emulate and do well for. But primarily it was basically me reading and me going to school and me helping others that really have brought me to where I am today.
And now you were talking about growing up North Battleford, Saskatchewan. What was the environment like there? You talked about, living in poverty. Obviously, it wasn't the best situation living there. Tell me about your time there and what led you to leaving, because I believe you were in Edmonton going to school before you came to the Peace region, if I'm correct. So kind of walk me through that journey from, Battleford growing up to going to Edmonton for school to coming here to the Peace region where you have been for the past, close to 30 years.
What led me there? I mean, I went from North Battleford to Saskatoon and started working with the Friendship Centre in Saskatoon in that movement as a program director, and then really wanted to, go to school, and led me to Grant MacEwan in Edmonton, and then and from there, then I came up to the Peace, but basically, I mean, getting out of Saskatchewan, I just really felt like I needed to build my own life. And that's what led me to Edmonton. And then through Edmonton, I had a couple of retail stores, one in Edmonton, one in Calgary.
Oh, okay.
So I got involved in the clothing industry probably close to 40 years ago, and started manufacturing over in Asia and Italy, and opened up a store on White Avenue called Ezio, and then on 17th in Calgary called Ezio. So I got involved in the clothing manufacturing, and before I did that, I was actually working for the federal government in Stats Canada, and had a fairly good job. I mean, as a a PM2 back then. I mean, it's like a level up from clerical or whatever, a couple, and ran into a friend of mine from Saskatoon who had just came back from Indonesia and was looking to open up a store in Edmonton. So we got together and opened up that store in Edmonton, and then opened up the one in Calgary as well. And then about, 10 years after that, I met Gary, who was also at that time in the fashion industry. And then we started manufacturing a line of clothing over in Asia as well, Agazaze. And it was all native-inspired clothing, because I'd already been to Indonesia and to Italy manufacturing. And then when we got together, he's like, he was running a fashion design school in Dawson Creek for Indigenous youth there. And so then we started manufacturing over in Asia, and then we started for 10 years being on the road with a line called Symbols. We did it under the Agazaze design, and then we We actually branded it as symbols. And we're very, very successful. And I spent about 10 years traveling all across this country and into the United States, promoting and selling Indigenous fashion and jewelry, et cetera, et cetera. And then after that, just got totally burnt out and said, no, I just can't be doing this anymore. And then shortly after that, then I went to the Northeast Aboriginal Business Centre, where I spent 18 years prior to leaving the organization when I got elected into the Metis Nation BC government 3 years ago. So, and then, before that, 2008, even though I was working at the business center, then I started Scoop.
Yeah.
And then 4 years ago, just before I got elected with the Metis Nation of BC, started Boreal Gardens. So you see that I'm very entrepreneurial, and I look at opportunities and see a need in the community. And for me, food sovereignty is extremely important. I've just been appointed by the Minister of Agriculture for BC on her advisory on Indigenous agriculture and food. I'm actually attending my first meeting in the next 10 days in Vancouver. But so I'm involved, and then we also, with the Metis Nation of BC, started another ministry, Agriculture and Food Sovereignty, which I am the Assistant Deputy Minister for that as well. So food's very important to me. Retail, I just can't seem to get out of it. I've been doing it for most of my life.
Yeah.
But you know what? I'm really happy that I'm able to have Scoop, because I'm able to employ people there and be able to contribute to it, the community. And the community has, really been very generous and very supportive of Scoop clothing. 2008 we opened, and it's 2023 and we haven't gone anywhere yet. And we've been in the same location, which is pretty spectacular.
And you survived so much. One notable is obviously COVID. So many businesses over, my math is horrible, but over 10 years for sure you guys have been here in Fort St. John. I'm assuming it hasn't been super easy. How have you kept the business afloat during that time? Obviously, it seems like your experience prior to that has lent itself to when you actually started Scoop. So the past, over 10 years, has it been difficult, or, has the community support and been so good that it has been kind of easy to keep it in the community?
Well, no business is easy.
Yeah, I guess easy is the wrong word.
Yeah, and 15 years we've been in business.
Okay, 15.
And so we went through COVID. Then we went through a flood that shut us down. The upstairs office actually flooded, the law office down into Scoop. And then we went with a road closure on 100th.
Yeah, the 100th Street, yeah.
So we have been through so much. And but you know what? I just really believe in Scoop. I believe in the philosophy. Like I always say to my staff, we are not in the business of selling clothing. We're in the business of empowering women. This is not about selling clothing, but we are empowering women. When women come into that store, we're empowering them, through conversation, through support, and, fashion as well, through products that, make them, feel good, right? So it's all about the empowerment. I didn't get involved in this business to sell clothes. That wasn't my initial reasoning to do it. And in 2007, I rented a little kiosk down at the mall, and I basically sat up there for, I think, close to 2 months, and I did lots of interviewing before I opened up Scoop. And I just wanted to talk to women about, what it was that they felt was that they needed in the community that they didn't have access to. So through my market research is how I got, involved in Scoop. And I didn't think I was ever going to go back into retail. Like I thought I was done with it. After, owning 2 stores, manufacturing overseas, being involved with Agazaze, Symbols Design Corp for 10 years, being on the road, going to trade shows, setting up. I was just like, I am so done. And so then I took a 10-year hiatus from the fashion industry and then got back into it. So there's obviously, like I was saying, my passion is fashion. There's something there, right? And then, but I feel the same way now about Boreal Gardens and about being able to grow food. And as we're sitting in this dome, we're seeing that we're surrounded still by food. I have food out in my hoop houses. I'm trying to get people to take these tomatoes, get them out of here. All this, there's still lots of food around here. And this year has been especially hard for Boreal Gardens because we lost NEAT in the community And so that's where I got my farm workers from. And this year, not having that program really, was a struggle. I mean, I managed to hire people part-time, but not having that access to daily workers was really, really tough on Boreal Gardens. And, it made me having to go out there and doing a lot of the physical work. So right now, it's the end of the season. Yes, there's still stuff to harvest, but I'm just like, I'm very exhausted.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to ask you, how do you, through the many decades of all the work you've done, how do you make time for it all? And I said the same exact thing to Gary a couple months ago with all you guys have going on. Is it just, you start with, obviously, it's just over time you add more things onto your plate. Yeah, how do you have so much time for it? It's just...
Well, we both get up about super early, about 5 in the morning.
Oh, wow.
And go to bed around 10, 11. So there's a lot of hours in the day that are committed to work. There's always a project to go on. Like, I have to can beets. I got to get those done because the beets can't stay out any much longer, right? But it's just like, commitment to get it done. And, it's like I always say, and maybe Gary doesn't like this any longer, but I'm like, get her done. It's like, that's kind of like my attitude. But I know that it's coming to a point now, as we age, that I'm wanting to do less, right?
Naturally.
Yeah. So we are. Am I slowing down? No, not really, because I still have lots of my commitments. But I'm the type of person, if I'm committing to something, then I'm going to commit to it. I'm going to stick it out, and I'm going to do it. Right. I mean, I really just want to, hopefully be able to continue with my work with Metis Nation of BC. We have an election coming up next year, and I'm putting my name in the hat, and I hope that I'll get reelected for another 4 years to be able to do that work. Because right now, if you were to ask me the question, like, what is the most satisfying thing that you're doing in your life right now, and for me, it's working for my people. And I really felt 4 years ago that I was ready to be a servant leadership for my own people. I spent lots of time with Gary, working in First Nations and working with the elders and working on all the projects that he's done over the years, and really supporting, Doig River First Nation, which I'm affiliated, 35 years with Doig River First Nation, and I love that community and the people in it, and I'm just so proud to see, all the wonderful things that they're doing. But I really felt that it was time for me to serve my own Métis Nation of British Columbia, and with the servant leadership philosophy. And since I've been elected, I mean, we've got a lot accomplished. I mean, I don't know if you're aware, but we just bought a 40 apartment unit
Crosstown,
block,
yeah.
Crosstown Apartments. We bought the former Passive House, which we renamed the Métis House. We purchased the lot next door, and we're going to get started very shortly here in building a daycare for Indigenous children and others. And then we also purchased 4 lots in Hudson Hope. We're going to start building there as well. We're just doing the architectural drawings right now. So we've, doing a lot in the community, and, my passion and my mission, to my constituents was that when I get elected, that I'm going to make sure that we get things happening in the north. And so the whole philosophy of having these, community centers all across British Columbia, Fort St. John is the first community to have it.
How many years have you been with Métis Nation now?
I'm going into my 4th year.
I want to know, when did your passion for, like you said, your people, for Métis people, when did that spark? When did you decide to do something? Did it start when you were younger, or when you're in school? Like, when was the first time that you decided, oh, hey, I want to, keep reading about my people, or I want to do some work and go out there and try and fundraise, or whatever the case may be? When did that start for you, do you believe?
Oh, I think it started when I was quite young, because I knew, that I was Métis from the time that I was born. It was, and so I always had a passion for Indigenous people, and I've always worked, all the work that I've done, even prior to the Northeast Aboriginal Business Centre, working with the John Howard Society in Edmonton, working with the Friendship Centre in Saskatoon. I've always, I've actually dedicated my entire life to working with Indigenous people. And I've served 30 plus years on the provincial government, on advisory boards and boards. Currently right now I'm on ICBC, on our Crown Corp, serving there. I just got appointed, by the Minister of Agriculture to her Indigenous Agriculture Advisory. I spent 9 years working, on the Women's Advisory to the Minister. So all my life has been dedicated to working with Indigenous people. So it was always there. And then, being with, Gary and him being from Doig River First Nation. So, I assisted wherever I could there as well. But I just, said, now it's time for me to go and serve my own people, the Metis Nation of BC, which I'm so grateful and thankful that I'm doing that, because the work is just amazing. I mean, our government, when we got elected, 3 years ago, we had 70 people, 70. Now we're close to 240 people that work for the nation.
Wow.
And we're building, ministries, and it's growing so quickly. And, the last census, there was close to 98,000 Métis people in British Columbia. So Métis in BC actually make up 1/3 of the Indigenous population. Wow. So we are a growing number. Mm-hmm. We're purchasing land all across British Columbia, and we're building these community hubs, which, like I just mentioned, that Fort St. John is the first one to have one. And so we are a growing concern, and we have so much opportunity, and we're fighting for our Métis, for our rights, right? For our Section 35 rights to be recognized as a Métis. We are recognized by the province of BC as the government for Métis people in British Columbia. Mm-hmm. But we've got a long ways to go to be completely recognized. And it's challenging for us in British Columbia because of not having a land base like other provinces. But right now we are doing research, up in northeastern BC. The federal government has supplied us with the resources to do the research for around the Kelly Lake area. So, there's a long ways to go, but I really love, being at the, call it a pinnacle of our Métis government, and coming in at the right time, and, using the servant leadership philosophy, because, the people that I'm in leadership with have that philosophy. And we're here to serve the people. We're not here for ourselves. We're here to be able to have better access to healthcare, education, housing, all of that for our Métis people. So the work for me is probably the most satisfying work I've ever done in my life, from bar none. And it's about serving and seeing our nation grow and helping other people. I love it. I have not wanted to go to work. I'm excited, what the day brings. Of course, there's lots of meetings online, especially, because we were actually just got, voted in, and then COVID came. Got voted in September, COVID came in March, right? So most of our work has been, online, Zoom, things like that. It's nice for us to be able to meet in person. But the work is just so rewarding.
When you were younger, experiencing the racism as a Métis person, to jump years later to all the work you're putting in for Métis people as a whole, it's beautiful for me to hear. It seems like a full circle moment, right? Your official title with MNBC is Northeast Regional Director. Am I correct?
Yep, Northeast Regional Director, and as well as the Minister of Skills, Training, Employment, Post-Secondary. Okay,
so we're talking now the whole picture of the province and how it's moving, work to be done for Métis people. But now let's focus on Northeast BC. How has the response been like from Métis people in this region with all the things that you guys have been doing, not just over the past 4 years, but, just in general?
I think it's very positive. In fact, we had our senior leaderships come up last Saturday to meet with our community charter groups. So we had a day-long meeting last Saturday, and you know what? Sure, our community still have some concern about different issues, but the support that we give them, they all feel, they feel the love or feel overwhelmed. My job, with my communities in the Northeast, is to help make them independent, because they are, a separate organization on their own, right, with their own board of directors. So, we know potentially where the government is heading, and should we get a new government, federally I'm talking, things will probably change for all Indigenous people across Canada. So the thing is that I like to go in there and say, come on, we need to, let me help you. Let's start looking at own source revenue. So I'm happy to say, I mean, one of my communities is doing extremely well and receiving, grants. They have a food truck. They're getting involved in another opportunity with another nonprofit organization in Fort St. John. So they're being able to bring in their own source revenue. So this is what I want to encourage for all. All Indigenous communities across Canada, whether it be Métis, First Nations, Inuit, you have to have your own source revenue. You need to think like an entrepreneur. And at our cabinet tables, I mean, I often say that we need to think like entrepreneurs. And we need to, have our government having its own source revenue, our communities having their own source revenue. Because really, face it, the only way that you're going to make it in this day and age is you're either going to go out and get a good education or you're going to become an entrepreneur. And everybody that I know nowadays, we all have a side gig. Because we can't make it, if it's from, we're doing whatever, growing food, mixing medicines, doing, I was just with somebody last week in Vancouver and they do writing for baseball. So, everybody needs to have a little side gig. There's another employee that I was talking to that has a little bar business where she's in the Northwest, so she sets up and she tends to weddings and things like that. It's like, that's your side gig.
Some people have podcasts.
Yeah, exactly. We all need to have one.
Yeah. No, I totally understand. And so would a perfect example of that own source revenue, would that for Indigenous communities, Doig River First Nation?
Oh,
with
they're
Ujo and...
They're perfect.
Yeah.
They are definitely, a shining star in the Northeast, and with their, urban reserve that they're developing. And
in Fort St. John, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean... Yes, so and there's many First Nations communities across this country, and Métis governments and Métis communities that are, doing business and doing their own source revenue, because we can't expect the government to be taking care of us. I mean, sure, there's rights, and they're owed their rights. But really, the way to empower our people is to be able to help them in entrepreneurship, get them started. And that's why I really loved my work at the Business Centre. I spent 18 years there supporting entrepreneurs, through coaching, through education, through, offering services like resume writing, business plan development, all of that, right? So that is still, an organization that's here today in the community. And it's very important to be able to support entrepreneurs. But even in our own communities, it's very important to support entrepreneurs. And so that's what I mean by having your own source revenue and being able to support yourself.
What outside of that, what is another big... the word coming to my head is improvement, but I guess, what are some big things that need to be worked on for Métis community as a whole in BC to move forward in the future? From your position, what are you seeing?
Well, as a minister of STEP, Skills Training Employment Post-Secondary, we don't have enough money. I mean, last year we funded 2,200 students to go to school across the province. We are now helping with undergrad degrees, master's, PhD, industry training. Like, we need more resources because more and more of our people are wanting to, have higher learning, get more educated. So that's something that I see that's very, prevalent across British Columbia. Healthcare, something else. Like, our elders right now, I was just in Prince George about a month ago meeting with Northern Health. Like, our elders really need to have support. I mean, our Métis elders don't get, dental privileges, if they need hearing aids, if they need a walker, they don't get that. So basically, I mean, we try to supply as much as we can, but we don't have the resources to do it. So I want to see better health care for our people across this province, more education. And I want to see more, we just actually hired a Director of Economic Development at the Metis Nation. So I'm hoping that we see all kinds of things happening out of that. We need to really concentrate on our ECDEV, do more joint ventures. Like, we just need to be bringing in our own source revenues. And when you have that, then you're able to take care of your people.
You were mentioning, your conversation with your crew at MNBC about a potential change in leadership on the federal level. Do you think, whether it be federally or provincially within the next couple of years, whether there's a change, if there's a change, I should say, do you think that's going to be for the good or for the better, or do you think it's going to be, just a change up of priorities for you guys either which way?
Depends on what government you get.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
I mean, we have to be honest.
Yeah.
The Conservative government were not an ally or a friend of Indigenous people across this country.
They might say it, but I mean, actually getting money is a complete different thing, like showing that support, right? Like actually getting that funding and things like that.
Well, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I think under this current government, federally, we've seen more programs and more resources to help build our Indigenous communities across the country than we've ever seen in the history that I know of, right? And I've lived on this earth quite a long time, so and I'm the type of person who must and always votes in every election. Doesn't matter if it's for our area, this area, or for provincial, federal, whatever. I mean, I love to vote. I love casting my vote. I think it's just so empowering to be able to do that.
Your understanding and work within the federal and provincial governments, do you think that's helped your career with every other thing that you have your hands in as well? I mean, specifically for MNBC, it seems like it has, because you understand. You can see when there might be a change in the wind, you know what I mean? Or, where they're putting their money. Like, you have an understanding, a grasp of government that not everyone has. Do you think that's definitely helped with, these things that you've done, whether it be different organizations as a business owner or whatever?
Oh, absolutely. Because like I said, I've, spent, I think close to 35 years serving the provincial governments, and been appointed to a lot of different, advisory groups through, the leaders of this province. And so that's helped advance my career. How did that happen? I think it was through my executive director work at the Northeast Aboriginal Business Centre. And we opened up that in 2002. So, in the peak is it 2002 or 2022? No, 2002.
For the Northeast Aboriginal Business Centre? I think that was 2002.
Yeah, it was 2002.
Yeah.
So
you were executive director 18 years?
18 years, yeah. So the work that I did at the business center definitely put my name on the map across the province. And so, has this community in the Northeast been good for me? Absolutely. I mean, I love it up here. I mean, I don't think I would have, had the opportunities should have I stayed in Alberta, or even Saskatchewan. But I think, coming up to the Northeast, as most people know, you come up here, there's so much opportunity. And people have really built themselves, solid businesses and solid lifestyles by coming to the North. Right. So, I mean, I always say the North, people say, oh, what about living there? Well, there's lots of opportunity because there's many services that we need here that are not being developed. Right. So come to the North and make a good life for yourself.
If you have the passion and you have the drive, you're going to love it here. That's the biggest thing I tell people. Right. But if you're just coming here to go with emotions and just go to a job and you're not actually like trying to experience the North, then, there's going to be a problem. But I would feel like that's with any area. That's what I try and tell people. I'm from Edmonton, born and raised from Edmonton. So since I've began my career in media, it's been in smaller cities. And so I had to get used to it, like with Lloydminster and then moving here to Fort St. John. But, I love it. My biggest thing is my passion for local news. And, obviously that's my career. But with that has also shot out to my passion for the North because I'm actually going out and seeing things and joining these different communities, which is so awesome. So I always tell people that, there's so many opportunities up here. You just have to look for them is really what it all comes down to. Before my next question, Paulette, I do want to kind of lay out the timeline because you've done so many extraordinary things. Your resume is huge. We've talked about different awards you've had, different organizations you're with, but just like a vague timeline for my next question, I want to say. So like you grew up in Battleford, Saskatchewan. I'm guessing you went to post-secondary school in Edmonton, or no, sorry, you said you went to Saskatoon first to work with the Friendship Society. Was that around like 18 before you went to school?
Yes.
So you went to Saskatoon, worked at the Friendship Society. So it seems like that's when you kind of sparked your, well, you said it was when you were younger, but your advocacy work for Métis people, Indigenous people in general, kind of was pushed forward when you worked there. And then you said from there you went to school in Edmonton, worked there, did your fashion career there, and then you came here to the Peace, started with the Business Centre, then you opened up Scoop in 2007. The Boreal Gardens was a couple years ago. I know I'm missing some other things, but basically I wanted to show kind of a rough timeline of like, you know, you were taking no breaks. Like from this conversation, from my perspective, it seems like you weren't taking any breaks, and you've had so many, for lack of a better term, issues that you've advocated for over the years and have done a lot of work for. Do you think the work you've put in, that all those subjects here in Northeast BC and Fort St. John are in a better place because of the work you put in?
Oh, absolutely. Like, I'm proud of all of the opportunity that I've had to be a servant leader, and all the things that I've been involved with, from economic development, like you mentioned, to women's issues. I mean, I ended up in Edmonton to go to school at Grant MacEwan to do Native communications. So that was really an eye-opener for me as well, because I really thought that I was going to be a journalist, right? And then I applied to a program in Banff, and unfortunately this arts journalism course got canceled, so that I didn't pursue that, right? And then sometime later down the road, I went back to Grant MacEwan to do some public relations. But I found it really challenging for me at that time, because I was diagnosed at that time with a learning disability called a nonverbal learning disability. So anything with layers is really challenging for me. So the desktop publishing, of course, right, I couldn't understand why I couldn't get it and everybody else could get it, right? So I ended up, going to see the Indigenous counselor there, and then ended up going to, I can't remember the name of the hospital in Edmonton, but they tested me, and so that came back there, right? But I mean, I learned through all that people with that type of disability, learning disability, usually have very high IQs. So not that I've ever used that as a distraction for not learning, because if you talk to my siblings and ask them, what I was doing as a young child, it was always a book, right?
Yeah.
Like, so I grew up with a love for reading, and I still do a lot of reading today, right? And so, I mean, I consider myself to be, intelligent and a go-getter, and being able, I mean, I have a skill level that I know that, is my skill level. Like, I love branding, marketing, putting together events, building businesses.
You're cognizant of your skill sets. Yeah.
And
where you're strong.
and being creative. I mean, that's what I like. So I believe that everything that I've done in my whole career, has attributed to the work that I'm doing right now with the Metis Nation of BC. And I think that I bring in a lot of expertise of leadership, because really it's all about, being able to lead and to lead others and being an advocate. And I'm a very strong advocate for the Northeast. Have been, ever since I've lived here, even though, not just in the Indigenous world, but being an advocate for the Northeast and to have better services here.
Yeah, it's definitely, and it's something that a lot of members of the community are still working for now with certain things. Moving over to the Boreal Gardens, we definitely mentioned it. You opened up a couple years ago. When did your passion for the gardens, really start, and food security? Did that stem from all the issues, going on with Indigenous and Métis communities in terms of their food security? Was that where it sparked, or just how did it start for you, and why did you and Gary decide to create it?
Well, I think it started for me about GMOs and, Monsanto, and the fact that, our food that we're purchasing, in grocery stores has GMO food. And so I want to get away from GMO food, and I want to be able to, grow organic and heritage seeds. So for me, it came from basically, first of all, food security for ourselves. And then the larger picture, food security for the Northeast. And then the larger picture, food security for the whole province, and all of Canada and all of the world. It's very important. So my passion for growing food was basically, first of all, and it was basically a testament to see if I had the skills and ability to be able to do it. And like a friend just said to me, yeah, last year you planted 4,000 garlic. You had a goal, you did it, there you did it, right? Because I was saying to him, this year I'm only doing 400, not 4,000. He's like, what, so for me, often growing food is kind of like it's a drive, but also it's a test towards myself of whether or not I can do it. So, of course, it comes from about feeding others, because I'm constantly feeding others, and people come here and they're constantly, taking food home because it's here to share. So it was basically just a passion about being able to grow organic food. And then I started reading a lot about sustainability and permaculture, and really got interested in the whole fact of, having a permaculture farm, which is what we do have here on 5 acres. And, it's really about, and then Gary's philosophy is like, let's build a food forest. So, that's happening as well. So it's been great, but like it's a lot of work, and but I love doing it, and I love being able to come out and collect the food for dinner, and be able to know that we're eating food that was grown right here on the land.
And that you guys worked on, that you guys cultivated, and now you're eating. That sounds so great. So I guess right now you were talking about, kind of the goal for food security, for you guys, for the community, for province. Where are you guys at right now? What services are you offering through Boreal Gardens? How does it work for people that might not know?
Well, what we've been doing this year is a lot of events. So companies are signing up, and they're coming here, and they're, having, like the one that we had last month with Community Futures was basically a taste of Boreal Gardens. So we basically, did all kinds of food that we grew, from cabbage rolls to zucchini chips and all kinds of lovely things, salads in between. So we've been doing a lot of farm tours, so people have been coming. We just actually did one on Wednesday as well, and that was tea and treats. So they got to, taste our delicious boreal tea, which we're both drinking right now. And then we were able to make some really lovely treats, from zucchini cake to rhubarb cake to pumpkin tarts, a food that we grew on the property. And so we've been doing that. We also built a tiny house, and our intention was to do it as an Airbnb, but actually it's now being rented. We just rented it for 6 months, and then we just re-rented it again for another 6 months. So we have that coming in for Boreal Gardens, as well as the food. I mean, we did sell, most of the garlic that we produced this year, we sold. We did some farmers markets earlier in July when our granddaughter was here from Burnaby visiting, so she was helping set up at the farmers market. So we did some farm markets. For next year, we got to look at what we're going to do. So it looks like we are talking about doing a farm stand, and just doing an honorary farm stand, where we put the food out every day and people can come and purchase it and then just, leave their money.
Yeah.
So we look like we might be doing that next year to help us, bring in more farm income. So we're just always diversifying. We do have 4 hoop houses, but we've only grown out of 2 for the last couple of years. We now have the dome with heat, so we can grow in here year round.
Which we're in right now. I don't know if we mentioned that. I think we might have, but it's absolutely beautiful. But yeah, you were saying year round, and also a beautiful place for you to have your coffee in the morning, right? Or tea.
Absolutely. And absolutely. And we've been, the last couple of years, been planting a lot of haskellapes and Saskatoons and cherry trees, and more, and expanding our raspberry gardens. So, we've been doing a lot of that. So next year I hope to be able to plant more trees, more fruit-bearing trees, and more perennials, because as we get older as well too, I think it's better for us to have more perennials, growing around the property.
Mm-hmm. How many fruits and vegetables do you grow in a season?
Oh, probably the fruits, probably about 6 different ones, and then the vegetables, probably a good 20.
Wow. And then you said you grow quite a few of them, obviously. And so that's like, how, I guess my question, how do you plan how many you want to grow for the season, because, you're doing it for yourself, and obviously there are, other, places that you're utilizing the food. But how do you plan that out? Because you were saying you plan it every year. It's just...
Oh, no, but I mean, maybe I don't plan so
Oh,
well because
okay.
I got a whole house full of tomatoes and cucumbers, right, that can't even get picked fast enough, right? So maybe I need to go into a better planning, but again, it's just a competition for me. It's like, how much can I grow? It's like, and Gary's always saying, well, I don't think you need to grow that much. And I was like, yeah, I want to. I have the seeds, right? Let me grow, right? And then, then it becomes a lot of work. I mean, I didn't get very overwhelmed this year, even though I didn't have a lot of help. But, I mean, I have definitely been overwhelmed. I mean, I guess maybe planting 4,000 garlic last season was very overwhelming.
Yeah.
And then, having to, take them all down this year and then hang them. I mean, I had help. I had some family come in from Saskatchewan and they helped with it. So, I mean, we've had
It was
help.
good looking garlic. I saw on your Facebook page the picture. It looked like some great garlic. They were bigger, too.
Yeah.
That's so awesome. And especially how expensive they are at stores nowadays. What's your advice if someone came up to you and wanted to be an entrepreneur but didn't know where to start out? They may hear your story and so many other entrepreneurs in the community, because I think your story, Gary's story, other people's are very similar in terms of, like you're saying, you're not just doing one thing. You're doing many different things. You have your hands in many different pots. You, for different reasons, one of them being just testing yourself to see where you're at and if you can do something. But if someone who wanted to get into it and get into being an entrepreneur and a business owner, what would you say to them? Find one focus and then, expand from there? Or what would be that advice?
I think my first question to them would be, what are you passionate about?
Okay.
And then they're like, oh, I don't know what I'm passionate about.
Fine.
But, and then coaching, like really, let's close your eyes, take a deep breath. Like, if you could see yourself doing something, where are you? What does it feel like? It's like, and I have 2 coaching certifications behind me as well, so I managed to do coaching in training in my career as well, too, because I really love coaching people one-on-one. And then really, break it down to there, and then, talk about, that business, and what the duties are in that business, and then find out what they gravitate towards. Because some people just love accounting. They own businesses, and that's what they want to do. I don't. I like marketing and PR and social media and coming up with ideas and things like that, right? And I like merchandising, and I like, shopping for, our product for Scoop. Those are the kind of things that I like to do. I like selling, even though I'm not in the store anymore selling. But, when I did and when I was good at it. I love to talk to people. I love finding out what people want or what they like, what they don't like, that kind of thing. So it's more like coaching. So, and I would say follow your dream. They're like, oh, well, I gotta keep working because I need to put food on the table. But maybe what about a course? Like, I mean, do you feel like you need to, have help with public speaking? Go to Toastmasters. Like you wanted, do you need to learn how to do bookkeeping? Take a course, or mentor under somebody. Like, start small, right? And then, do what you love to do. Like I always say to people, like, just don't do a job for the sake of doing a job. Do a job because you love to do that job. You love waking up in the morning and doing what your job is. Like, that's how I feel. I mean, and I wake up and it's like, okay, so what am I going to accomplish today? Like, I'm up, this morning was 5 a.m., I had to be out of the house by 7:45, I was like, yeah, right? And so...
Whereas I'm waking up at 8:30, like, okay, here we go.
Yeah.
I love that you wake up at 5. Like, so many people, I've definitely tried to be the early riser. I'm someone who's like, wake up 9 o'clock, 8:30, whenever I have to be at work, whatever. But I stay up late. Like, I stay up till 2. And then my brain is the night brain. Like, all my ideas, my creativity, it comes at that point. So, like, I also write on the side, right? Like, I write my own, fiction and things like that. It's always at night. And it's just so funny hearing that because, I'm someone who could stay up, probably till 7 in the morning doing that stuff. But then there's other people waking up at 5 in the morning. Like, I've heard, like, the actor Mark Wahlberg, he goes to bed at, like, 9 o'clock, wakes up at 3, 4 in the morning, does a big workout, all his business stuff throughout the day, and it just seems like, it's funny hearing people structure their day to get more out of it, which is just so interesting to me. And I just thought of that too. It makes sense though, being as you're getting more out of your day to do all the things that you need to do, right? Like, 'cause I'm sure every day for you is super busy.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
But I like to be finished around 4 o'clock, so I can make a really
Said
lovely
it.
dinner. Because
Yeah.
I mean, I love food more than anything in the world. I think about food. I obsess about food. I plan, my dinner, for tonight, from last night, what I'm going to eat tonight. So I really love being in the kitchen and
Awesome.
cooking. So for me, that is like relaxation and being able to prepare food that's delicious and people like the food and. So
And you grew it.
and I grew the food, and like just earlier before you came, I was out picking some herbs that I need for my food, and it's great. I mean, and I'm like, now I got to go pick some salad for tonight, and it's all growing in that one greenhouse, and it's just so pleasurable. But yeah, no, I envy people. I wish I could stay up late, but but my brain thinks better in the morning. Give me a cup of coffee, and I'm already like going right, and I'm at my computer, and I can be focused. But at night, like. No, I'm go to bed really early.
Yeah, it's so weird for me too. And it's like even when I have to wake up early, say on a weekend. So I coach basketball. This is an example. On Saturdays, we have, the fall program going on right now from 10 to 12, that's not too early. But what I find is on those days I'm waking up at like 7 on a Saturday, which is out of character for me. And I'm the same way though. I'm just like have my coffee and I'm zooming, but it's not like that all the time. Like on work days, like Monday to Friday, I am not like that. I definitely need my coffee and it does help, but I'm not just like super. And it's not that I don't like my job or anything. It's just so funny how it's trying to find how you function within your job, right? And seeing what works for you. But 9 times out of 10, if you talk to anyone who's super successful in business, they're waking up at 4 or 5 in the morning. It seems like a common theme because they're getting more out of their day.
Well, and as an entrepreneur, you have to be thinking about many things. You just don't have a responsibility for one thing. You have a responsibility, especially, you have staff and consultants that work with you, right? Like, you have to be able to have that business be successful because you have to pay all these people. They rely on you for their livelihood and income. And like me, I mean, I have consultants that work with me. Got somebody doing my social media, somebody doing my bookkeeping, somebody doing my, as a retail consultant, and then you got all your staff, and then, you got your PST, GST, employee remittance, so you have to always be thinking about, okay, what are we going to do to make these sales? And then you have sales goals, and then you want to cheer on your team. It's like, you can do it. You're just about there. You got to have, rah-rah, all of that. And even... doing, events here all summer. Like sometimes I was tired, but the thing is that, you just got to pick yourself up and just got to, be positive and be that ray of sunshine. So when people are coming here and they're paying you, to come and see the farm, it's like, you know what, that's your job, like to be able to entertain and to be able to show people and then be able to have them feast on the food that you grew, right? Yeah. So it's like you got many different layers to entrepreneurship. It's not just one thing. Like, it definitely is not stagnant. It's definitely, a place where you can build all sorts of skills. And then if you don't want to build those skills, then you just hire for those skills to be developed and done for you.
With all the advocacy work you've done for First Nations, for women, for the business community as a whole, have you had women or business owners or First Nations individuals, Métis individuals in general, come up to you and talk to you about the work you've done? Maybe have you impacted them or they've had questions for you? Like, is that a part of you being an entrepreneur for so long as well? Acting as a mentor to those who are coming up in the community?
Oh, absolutely. Just a couple of weeks ago, I was in Surrey, and I did a talk on servant leadership. And I had people come up to me and say, oh my gosh, I could have just listened to you all day long. Do you realize I was just staring at you as you spoke? But, you just inspired me. And I know one gentleman the next morning said, you know what, I did a bunch of research on servant leadership. I love that philosophy. They said, your leadership skills, the fact that you're a woman, an entrepreneur, things like that. But I mean, those things really don't matter. I mean, it's lovely that they say them, and it was nice hearing them, but that's not what makes me me. What makes me me is my drive. And, at my age, I still have drive. I have drive to do some things. I was just listening to a CBC reporter last week talk about how our children in this country are going to school hungry, and that a lot of schools don't have the resources for food programs, and the ones that do are having a real hard time, finding sponsorship. So that just got me to thinking, and then I chatted with another, farmer friend about what can we do. So now I'm just, percolating, what is it that I can do, right, to be able to help? How can we help feed the children in our own district, not, not outside of our area, but
like you said, start small.
Start small. Like,
Yeah.
what can we do? How can we assist? And all my life, I have been a donor of food banks, and that was from growing up hungry. And I don't want to hear or see any child go hungry, and so I still to this day donate to the Women's Resource a lot. When I was in Edmonton, it was food banks. I got started when I lived in Edmonton, or back in Saskatoon, donating to food banks. And I just donated to a GoFundMe today, but I mean, I'm a real sucker for GoFundMe. I just want to be able to, have the fact that our children are able to go to school, with food. Because, I mean, I was one of those children that went to school hungry. Very hard to learn when you're hungry. Very hard to focus when you're hungry. And so to me, it's really important. Food is really important to be able to be shared, and to find a way and to find out in the school district here, because I haven't reached out that far yet, to find out, what are our stats in Fort St. John? Where is the need? I donate also to the Friendship Centre as well, to their food program. So, so I think it's very important for people to be able to help the less fortunate. And we have, them in our communities, and they reach out through Facebook or however, right? And I just think it's important not to ask questions, but if you can help, to help.
And there's a lot of initiatives that would say the same thing, especially here in Fort St. John and the Peace Region, that are doing things for Women's Resource Society, Salvation Army, Friendship Society, Community Futures, all those different things that are offering services in the community, which is awesome. The state of females in business, how do you think it is here in the Peace Region? From my perspective, I feel like it's split for the most part. I don't know the stats on paper, but I see a lot of female business owners in the community, which is absolutely awesome. With all your years under your belt and seeing the business world change to be more accepting to females, how are you feeling about how the state is right now here in the Peace Region?
I believe we have a lot of female entrepreneurs.
And we have like the Spark conference that goes on specifically for female business, entrepreneurs, females in business in general. It's really incredible.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the building where the farmhouse was in, you've got Denise there with her flower shop. And then you have Crystal Leahy that's going in there with her salon. And then you have the owner, I'm thinking her name is Michelle, but anyway, she has the resale clothing, and now she has an event space in the front as well, right? I was talking to another female entrepreneur this morning, and talking about, I love the idea of collectives, and it's so great to see a collective like that in our community. And then I ran into a woman from North Battleford at the market in Edmonton in September, and she was telling me about how she's turned her clothing store into a collective. So I can't wait to be back home in North Battleford to go visit it. So it sounds to me that there was like 5 or 6 women entrepreneurs. And I really think, that is a really great way for women supporting women. But I tend to do a lot of business in Fort St. John with women entrepreneurs, whether it be, printing or, beauty services or the farmhouse, there's just so many women that own businesses in Fort St. John. I think there's more and more women starting businesses here. especially, women who have maybe stayed at home with their children, and now they're deciding, okay, I want a career, but I don't want to go to work for somebody, and, being a mother and a caregiver in your home, taking care of family, you have so many skills that come out of it. Like, you know how to do everything.
Yeah.
So they make the best entrepreneurs, right?
Yeah,
Because
really,
they've had
really.
had experience of running a family, and that takes a lot. So I see it more and more and more, women entrepreneurs, and I definitely want to support them in Fort St. John. And and I think, I love the idea of shopping locally. I mean, there are some things that you possibly can't get in Fort St. John.
Oh, yeah,
We have to
yeah.
admit it, right?
Yeah.
But you know what? I was just purchasing a new washer and dryer this week. So, I went out and bought it locally, right? So, so supporting other businesses in Fort St. John, supporting Energetic City, with Whitney, with doing social media,
Yep.
supporting Rhonda and her printing shop. Like, it's just supporting women and helping women entrepreneurs, like, to be able to develop their businesses, because it's the women of Fort St. John since 2002 that have supported Scoop. So, I have much gratitude to the women from this region that have, supported us, to this day. We're still in business since 2002. That's a long time
Yeah,
for
that
a
is a
clothing
very long
retail
time.
in Fort St. John, because I've
Yeah.
seen so many of them close, right? But, we have no plans in closing. We hope to be able to remain at that location for the rest of our existence. We haven't moved in 15 years, so we've
Incredible.
expanded and we renovated and things like that, right? But we really like, there's some challenges with the downtown core right now.
Yeah.
I'll admit it. We've seen a real a change in the last 6 months, which, is not very desirable for a business owner downtown. And I just hope that, that our community is going to rally to be able to support.
And there is a lot. There is a lot of people voicing their opinions and trying to make a change, and definitely, obviously, being a news director, I know what's going on in council, and they're trying. They're trying to, at least they're bringing it up and talking about it. But I guess we'll just have to see what changes happen. And for those of you living in Fort St. John, you probably know what we're talking about. But for those of you who don't, there's been topics of homelessness, the overdose prevention site in the downtown core. There's been talks about encampments, homelessness encampments, and finding an area for them. Nothing has been completely 100% sorted out right now, but these are conversations were happening, and on top of rising crime, property crime too here in the city. But as a business owner for 15 years. Do any other business owners come up to you and ask you for any tips on how to survive that long, especially in the retail world where it's ever changing?
No, but I definitely would be open to having conversation. I do get questions from other women entrepreneur businesses that I frequent, about, especially about, online business, because Scoop built their online presence about 4 years ago, and we constantly have to invest in it and constantly work at it. It's getting better, but it's, nowhere where we want it to be. But you have to, I was saying to another woman entrepreneur this morning, think about it. Scoop is a standalone business. Then you have an online store. That's another business within that business. So now you're working two businesses instead of one, right? So, so I have questions like that about, our online, but, quite a few years ago, myself and a couple of other retailers started to, meet with Lynette from the coffee place. Like, we were wanting to start a downtown business association, and it never got off the ground.
Oh, like Whole Wheat and Honey you're talking about?
Well, we Whole Wheat and Honey were part of it back then as well too, right? Yeah.
Okay.
But we really tried to get a downtown merchants association going, but to no avail. It was really difficult for us to get the support from the city. So I'm hoping that somebody like the Chamber of Commerce will take that on and have a downtown association where we're able to come together as downtown business owners to talk about the issues, but also to talk about, solutions, and to talk about ways that we can all work together collectively. Whether it be, marketing dollars, all put in together to be able to market, maybe an event. I'd love, at one time, we used to have the, I think it was the midnight shopping, things like that in Fort St. John. We'd have more events, right? Like sidewalk sales. That's just not happening anymore.
I think it's starting to pick up now. Like, because I heard it was before the pandemic, it was definitely like very, very busy all the time. Do you think it's picking up or not as much?
You know what? Our business through the pandemic actually soared.
Was it through online sales?
Through online sales
Yeah.
and different, and doing the videos and
yeah.
and all of that. So I mean, we actually kept afloat during the pandemic. I mean, sure we had we lost, but I mean, it's our Scoop has been consistently does the same. We're growing a little bit here and there. But I just really wish that we did have a downtown association where we could, be more of a mentor, and women or people in business that have been in business longer to be able to, talk to the up and coming businesses. I mean, I love the fact that the young girls across the street opened up a clothing store.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's amazing. They're young and they're doing it, right?
They're very young too. I think when they started it, one of them was like not even 18 yet, which I don't know for sure because I don't know if that's legal or not. But I know it was Marcella's and Thelma and Marcella's. Thelma and Marcella's, yeah, and they had this cute little spot, and then they just moved recently to actually be like in the downtown core, which is awesome. Which is great to hear, like these young women being, putting together a business is awesome.
Amazing.
Awesome.
It's amazing.
Awesome.
And then the farmhouse, relocating next week to a bigger location downtown. Now having more of like probably it sounds like they're going to have more food service there, which is great.
that's wonderful.
It's wonderful. And then Peaceful Pages, with her little coffee shop,
right next door to Energetic and Moose.
I mean, it's just like it's so amazing. And these are all women entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
So we're seeing more and more women, and I just love the fact that women are opening businesses in Fort St. John. And businesses close and businesses open, and I really love the fact that all these women have seen an opportunity. It's like, okay, there's an opportunity to do this, right? And they do that. Yeah.
Well, Paulette, we reached the end of the podcast. I had a lovely conversation with you. As I said, I'm looking at my sheets. I still have many more questions, but we'll definitely, hopefully, talk again. My last question for you, we ask every single guest that's been on the podcast, and it's actually been a bit because I've had some repeat guests on, so I don't keep asking them it, but what does reconciliation mean to you?
Well, first of all, I've stated publicly that I do not like that word, reconciliation. But if we're going to talk about reconciliation, and really, we can't have reconciliation until we put resources in. So show me the money. Put your money where your mouth is. Because as far as I'm concerned, it's just useless banter. On and on and on and on and on. And true reconciliation, if you want true reconciliation, it comes from resources. So being able to say here.
Yeah, it's not, put some action to it. Don't just say some words. And I think that's my issue with the word reconciliation, and we've talked about this on many episodes. I don't like the word either, because it's now just used as just a buzzword. It's just, I feel like its meaning now is gone because they just keeps getting regurgitated so many times. But then my thing is, what else do we say? What would you say other than reconciliation? And now it's just so ingrained in me. And that's an honest question. Like, I don't know what else to say. Like, come together, as that's what I said.
No, let's do business together.
Yeah, let's do business together.
Let's do business together,
Yeah.
right? Like, I have a product, let's do business together. I was just at the Indigenous Artist Market this morning, and because I was dropping off some product from Boreal Gardens because they requested it because they're getting lots of calls from industry of putting together baskets for Christmas.
Okay.
Right? Okay, that's doing something.
Yeah.
That's empowering the native producer, the native artist. By going to the Indigenous Artist Market, which is a social enterprise which I helped create, and the Indigenous Food Collective, which we didn't even get a chance to talk about.
Oh yeah,
but
that
those
was on my
those are
list
two
too.
social enterprises that I am so proud of that I've been able to help develop. Right, but you go there and you purchase baskets. I mean, they were saying that one company wants to buy 50 baskets. So, if we have another company come in and buy 100 baskets, and that's using the products from the local Indigenous artists in the region, that is, pardon the word, but I'm going to use it, that is reconciliation. That is helping our people to become self-determined and self-sufficient, and giving them income for doing something that they love to do.
It's bringing them a part of giving them a piece of the pie. They're a part of it, right? Or giving opportunities, right? It's just making it fair. And yeah, I totally agree with you on the reconciliation. We had someone on the podcast call it saying she likes reconciliation. Do something. Don't just say it. Let's act on it. Let's actually do something about it, right? And I think that's definitely it could get lost sometimes. It could get lost when someone keeps just talking about reconciliation. Okay, but where is the call to action? Where is, what is going to be done? What are we doing for this? It's very easy to just sit up there and say all these beautiful words, but let's do something. Let's, like you said, put your money where your mouth is. Right?
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Paulette. I enjoyed, again, chatting with you, and hopefully you'll come on again because, yes, we got more to talk to you about.
I'd love to do that.
When you get reelected, after you get reelected with MNBC, that's when we'll chat with you again. How about that?
Yes, and definitely.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Paulette.
Make sure you guys subscribe to Before the Peace using your favorite podcast app or at energeticcity.ca/podcasts. If you have a guest or program idea, email beforethepeace@energeticcity.ca.